pigs to humans. Health officials were alerted after a 10-month-old girl was admitted to a hospital last month, and so forth and so on and so on. And so we've got to watch out for that. The following comes from the United Kingdom news, the UK news. Listen to this one. The headline is MOD admits airborne germ warfare tests by Andrew Gilligan and Rob Evans. Large quantities of germ warfare stimulants were sprayed from aircraft over several areas of southern England, according to the Ministry of Defense. The admission by the Defense Secretary, George Robertson, shows that germ warfare experiments were more widespread than the MOD has previously disclosed. In a letter to Labour MP Ken Livingstone, Mr. Robertson expressed his, quote, regret, end quote, at the incomplete information provided by his predecessor, Michael Portillo. The new information will add to the growing concern in Dorset about the health impact of earlier tests disclosed in February. Local newspapers, councillors, and many residents have voiced concern that the tests already in the public domain are to blame for clusters, now listen to this, clusters of unexplained health problems, including several miscarriages in the coastal village of East Lulworth. Mr. Robertson said the airborne spraying formed part of the biological warfare trials program. Good God, what the hell are they doing? What in the hell are they doing? Now, this comes from the UK news. You know, so if you're not sure about what you're hearing from William Thomas, then go read something like this. And if they're doing that there, then you know damn well they're doing it here. We have really lost our minds. Lauren, back down to William Thomas. And William, did you hear that story I just read?
I did hear it, Art, yes.
This is, it's from the UK news, and here they are really admitting they're spraying stuff that makes people sick.
Art, 1 million British people were hit by those sprays from the aircraft, and a ship also used off the coast. It's exactly mirroring the similar tests out of San Francisco, New York, and other cities, again using ships and aircraft. E. coli and Serratia marcescens were used in some of the British tests. They were used on Americans as well, and we have found both in the chemtrail substance.
God. You know, I think a lot of people think you're cracked. And but you read something like this, and if they are openly admitting they're spraying things from the air that are making people sick in England, you said 1 million people.
1 million.
Then, you know, damn well they're doing it here too, and it really bolsters your argument. Anyway, look, we've got something that we want to do right now. We've got another guest with us. In fact, let me punch the button here. His name is Dave Peterson. Set it up for me, William. Who is Dave Peterson, and why are we bringing him on the air right now?
Dave Peterson is a gentleman from Aspen, Colorado, who has taken it on himself to come front and center on the chemtrail issue following very heavy spraying in Aspen. And he sponsored me into that city last summer during my speaking tour, and I did make a presentation there, Chemtrails Over America. And after that presentation, which was visited by at least one pilot, and now we're thinking maybe another, he came into possession of a fax sent to the editor of the Aspen Daily News, signed by someone calling himself a former NOAA pilot. That's NOAA, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration pilot. Right. I'll quickly note that NOAA and NASA have in recent years been very interested in and have been running intensive experiments with normal contrails and how they might affect the weather and climate. I wrote one of the first stories on this.
Yep, I'm certainly aware of that.
Okay. This person purports to be a NOAA pilot, and Dave Peterson gave me a call when that fax came in.
All right, do you want to have Dave read it, or are you going to?
I would like to read the fax, and then Dave followed up with an email interview with this pilot.
Ah, all right. Are you there, Dave?
Yes, I am.
Dave, welcome to the program. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and read this fax first, and then we're going to come to you since you had an interview with the person. So, William, go ahead. Read it.
Okay, this fax was sent in mid-August from a flight operations center in Colorado. Only pilots would have access to such a fax machine. It says, a pilot's side. Our mission was clear. Atmospheric studies, meteorological trend information gathering. We as government employees were not allowed to question the changes in equipment and personnel when it became obvious that our aircraft were now dispensing something. No flight plans were filed. Aircraft and crews were changed at remote air bases. No aircraft returned to originating air bases. The concentration of flights over certain population centers provides only a hint of what we might have been doing. Signed, a former NOAA pilot, using an email address that identified himself as a pilot.
So in other words, he thought he was doing early on atmospheric testing, that sort of thing, whatever NOAA does.
Yes, and he probably was.
And then that changed, and again, he is saying that he was, I take it, let's go to, that was alarming enough. Let's go to David. David, welcome again.
Yes, thank you.
All right, well, that's a very, very disturbing thing to receive. And how did you follow up?
Okay, I was quite alarmed, as you guys are expressing. I emailed this gentleman once and then twice. On the second email, I did receive a response. And in that email, I also asked him 7 specific questions so that I could get a feel for if this guy was legit. And he did answer each question succinctly. And if you'd like, I can...
I would like, yes. What did you ask him? How did he respond?
Okay, so the first question, what were the changes in equipment and personnel? His answer was, from happy weathermen to guys that didn't talk or smile.
From happy weathermen to guys who didn't talk or smile.
Yes. The next question was, why was it obvious the aircraft were dispensing something, and what were they dispensing?
Right.
The answer was takeoff weight, landing weight, fuel burn in pounds. Third question, why no flight plans?
Oh, wait a minute. What was he saying there? In other words, he was comparing the takeoff weight to the fuel, and then whatever else, what other substance he claimed was being carried. Was that what he's saying there?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, pilots know that. So the third question was, why no flight plans? The answer there was airspace was cleared for us.
Airspace was cleared for us. In other words, they simply moved other aircraft away totally from the flight path, this unfiled flight path?
I believe so. I take it to mean that, and possibly Will could address that better than I.
Art, I think this clears up one of the biggest conundrums we've had with this story. Why hasn't air traffic control announced these airplanes, and why are they insisting there have been no flight plans? And how in the world have there been avoidance of collisions between these spray planes and commercial planes? And here is the answer very clearly. Airspace was cleared for us. This would indicate also complicity, at least at the top of the air traffic control chain.
Yeah, there would have to be, wouldn't there?
Absolutely.
This man, this pilot, Is he willing to come forward, or what is his attitude now about, further information, maybe even coming on the radio or going on TV or blowing the whistle to the networks or whatever in the hell you do now? How does he feel about that?
Well, I think he doesn't feel too good about that because at the end of this fax, after he answered the rest of the questions, it was basically, he wrote, "I need time to think about this. The truth could set me free or I could turn up missing. Please give me time." I did give this gentleman time. I gave him several weeks, and at that point emailed him a third time for an update, and here's the response I received. "If you think the government is spraying you, may I recommend a hat and umbrella? Go away, leave me alone."
Huh. Well, there's a hell of a response. In other words, what's the guy saying here? It's almost tongue-in-cheek, as though he's accusing you now of believing what he said he was doing, and ridiculously so, That's kind of what that sounds like.
Yeah, that's what I gather, too. What I believe happened, he was accurate when he said he could turn up missing. Either someone put the fear of God in him, or he decided for his own safety not to take this any further.
What do you think? I mean, you were in conversation with the man, so you must have had a sense of how this was progressing over time. You think he decided that he was in danger?
That's my feeling on it. Yes.
God, David, is it your sense the man was real?
Yeah, very much so. My gut level feeling was this was very right on, and there was no evidence for me to believe that this was a hoax, especially with the jargon he uses, etc. And the rest of the questions certainly say more about this if you want me to continue with those.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So, let's see, where were we? The fourth question was, where are these remote air bases? The answer was Groom Lake, Nevada, in parentheses, Area 51, and the new one in Utah.
Well, there's been a lot of speculation that Area 51 was moved to Utah.
Yes.
Now, that's not true. It certainly has not been moved. There may be a new facility in Utah. I have no idea. But I can assure you, Area 51 is every bit as active as it ever was. The article saying that had changed was disinformation. So what else do you have?
Okay, so I asked for documentation. Do you have documentation that you are not allowed to question these changes? Simple answer was yes. But the most alarming question was number 7, which I wrote, where did the orders for this operation originate?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what I got for an answer was, and these words are all run together, no spacing, can't ensure accuracy. Now, each letter of the beginning of each word is capitalized.
CIA.
Correct.
Can't ensure accuracy. CIA. Jesus. You obviously feel this is real enough that you were ready to come forward on the air with it, David.
Yeah, absolutely. It's time to get this out.
Any suggestions on what we do?
That's a loaded question.
It sure is.
Yeah, I mean, my intention here at Aspen, since we're getting sprayed so heavily, has always been to raise the awareness. And I believe I've been successful in that. The press has been very friendly to me, covering Will's visit here with some follow-up articles. And in fact, they're going to be doing an article coming up in the next week or so about this letter. people are using the word chemtrail and spray day in their language, which tells me
Spray day.
a critical mass has been reached.
I guess so. Now, your communication with this pilot has now ceased.
Yes, I've honored his request to go away and leave him alone.
Did you try and appeal to his, I don't know, patriotic nature, I guess?
Absolutely. I thought it was his duty to come forward with this information, and I politely requested him to do so. I am contemplating contacting him one last time, although that may happen through the local paper.
I'll tell you, that's the appeal I'd try. I mean, I know that you take a risk when you come forward with this kind of information, and that you might disappear. I mean, I'm realistic about these kinds of things, but you know, the stakes here are so big that I don't. You know, I mean, how can the guy sleep at night?
Right, and how can he sleep knowing this information and not coming forward with it fully and disclosing everything? He apparently has documentation, but this may be a missed opportunity for us.
All right, David, I want to thank you for coming on the program and giving us this information. If you get any follow-up at all, you get to me right away, all right?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Art.
Thank you, David. We'll be right back. And a fax I've received and a witness we've got on the phone. But right now, back to William Thomas, and I think we want to finish up on the spraying angle and what we just heard about that pilot, or from that pilot. So, William, what else do you want to get out?
I want to pick up on where we left off, Art, with the mention of the Alphabet Soup Agency, the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, they're brought into just about everything we can't understand. But this rang some real alarm bells just 2 days ago when I received a story called Who's Who in the C-130 Scandal, written and very well researched by John Titus of the Portland Free Press.
Mm-hmm.
The story appeared last March and April and just came to my attention. The story talks about C-130s, and I'll note here that these 4-engine Hercules transport planes have been seen throughout the United States spraying substances from very low altitudes, treetop and rooftop altitudes, also in Ontario. When I was speaking in Colorado last summer, I took a 2-day holiday to Pagosa Springs, a little resort town known for its hot springs up in the Rocky Mountains. I had just checked into the motel and I was walking across the street when I stopped dead in my tracks, open mouthed, and watched a camouflaged C-130. This is a very big airplane.
Oh, yes.
Come down over the town at 500 feet or lower. This is illegal. You must maintain 1,000 feet separation over habitation. He glided in silently 500 feet as I watched this airplane about 2 blocks away swoop over the town, and as he pulled up, I saw 2 streams come from the wingtips of the aircraft, and he applied power and turned away. Now, when you apply power to throttle back turbines, you can get a greasy kerosene trail from all 4 engines. This was not the case. The engines were clean, and the trails were coming off the wingtips. I did a radio show, and a caller, very agitated, phoned in and said a formation of these C-130s had gone down the main street in Colorado Springs spraying. He and others had gone after the Air Force and had gotten nothing except routine exercise from the Air Force. Brings us back to the story on C-130s and how they've been diverted from the Forest Service for work by the CIA. Remember, these are spray aircraft equipped to spray from tanks or forest fires. We are talking, John Titus says, of 42 perhaps 42 former military planes, C-130s from the Air Force and P-3 Orions, that's a 4-engine Electra-type aircraft, diverted from the military and the C-130s from the firefighting capabilities of the Forest Service. And this story goes on to talk about how a former Air Force person, Roy Reagan, used a network of contacts to sell these aircraft on the open market, including aircraft sold to CIA operatives. A former director of the Forest Service Aviation Program, Fred Fuchs, if I have that right, was also involved in this. We go down and we see that Eugene Hotzenfuss, the man who was shot down and with the Washington phone number, White House phone numbers in his pocket, naming the CIA agents he worked for,
yeah, I remember.
Spilled the beans on the CIA selling drugs to run arms to the Contras. Okay. The article concludes by saying the C-130 scandal is but the tip of an iceberg, with dozens of companies and individuals operating beyond any kind of Forest Service or congressional oversight. Isn't it curious that spray planes have been diverted to the CIA for operations as yet undisclosed, to the point where extreme fires in Los Padres, Angeles, Trinity National Forest, and other California forests this summer basically went unfought, or at least without the services of these fire suppression airplanes.
Because they were busy doing CIA stuff.
They were doing CIA stuff, and it's my contention tonight that we are looking at a spray program using leased aircraft, at least for the low-level sprays by the C-130s identified in Ontario and throughout the United States. And now it's my contention, very possibly, the KC-135s we've been seeing may not be military at all, but could be leased or bought aircraft. Remember, the KC-135 is a civilian 707, a very, very old airplane, one of the first commercial jets, in fact. They are a dime a dozen, expensive to operate, but cheap to buy. And now I'm beginning to wonder if we have some answers here tonight on where these aircraft have originated, what agency is behind them, and even how this massive operation could be, underlined could be, financed, and that is through drug money.
Oh, it gets worse and worse. Are you worried about your safety?
No, not in the least. I have had zero negative feedback of any kind, official or otherwise, for these stories. Again, I had just quoted from a newspaper article written last March. All of my information comes from news sources except for the pilot, and that's about to be published by the Aspen Daily News. So as a working journalist, I'm simply doing my job, and I don't fear for my safety reporting this kind of information.
My advice is take care.
Well,
I really mean that.
I hear you, Art, and I can only answer by saying, for myself and anyone else interested in related stories, safety lies in publication and in broadcasting this material.
Yeah, and you have published, you have a book, which I want to make everybody aware of. What is your book? Actually, you've got two, but... I
have two that are very germane to our discussion tonight. Scorched Earth talks about the bio-war experiments over America. Bringing the War Home talks about Gulf War illness, a very secret American program, a White House program makes that, to supply Saddam Hussein with germ weapons. It talks about the mycoplasma, which is now rampant in the population, and most importantly, gives a chapter on treatment, not only of the mycoplasma, but in these immune-defeating biowarfare agents. And Bringing the War Home is available from my publisher through a toll-free number. I urge people to pick it up and become aware.
All right. I know we've got a link, Amazon.com, I'm sure has got them also.
Yes.
And so you can go that way, or you can call a toll-free number, which is...
888-6 1277.
1277.
$22.95 postpaid to your door. Very important information.
All right. We'll give that out again. In the meantime, do you have an email address or a way people can contact you?
I would prefer that people went to my website, and from there they can reach me by email.
That's fine. I'm sure we've got a link to your website.
Yeah, you do.
Right. So you can go to my website, go down to William's name, and go to his website, and there's a way to email you from there?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Yeah, that will work.
All right. Just go down to the name William Thomas under the guest area. Although there are a lot of people who will not immediately be able to do that, I would assume the majority will.
Okay, well, I can take a deep breath, Art, and stand back, but I can give my email address here.
No, Mark, go ahead.
Wilco, W-I-L-C-O, at islandnet, one word, islandnet.com. Please, if you're from the media, do email me.
All right, Wilco, and you're particularly interested in media contacts, obviously. Wilco at IslandNet. IslandNet is one word, .com. That's easy, W-I-L-C-O, Wilco at islandnet.com.
That's it.
All right, I have, again, I'm not going to read the whole thing, a fax from Dr. Robert Bogosian, who's been on the program before, and he says, in part, Dear Art, it's that time of year again when the bacteria and viruses are going crazy. The West Nile virus in New York, which I think got loose from the Plum Island Research Facility in the ocean off Long Island, is a good example. And that hit me right between the eyes because you contend the same thing, don't you?
Absolutely. There's no other explanation that comes close to the Plum Island connection, and I'm sure, of course, it's just a coincidence that Dr. Tracy McNamara, the animal pathologist at the Bronx Zoo, who was the first to identify that this was not St. Louis encephalitis, just a coincidence, Art, that she was trained at Plum Island Laboratory.
Of course. We've got a gal we're going to bring on right now named Patty Doyle. Who is Patty, and why are we bringing her on?
Patty Doyle is a retired individual who became quite incensed over the outbreak and cover-up, or what she felt might be a cover-up, and began researching this and badgering officials at Plum Island and elsewhere, and started to email me with incredible documentation. And I'll underscore that word. Her information has been fully documented and attributed. She has been a great help to me in unraveling this story, and her suspicion was exactly like my own. This was not a natural occurrence, and there was something behind this outbreak.
All right, let's bring her on. Patty Doyle, welcome to the program.
Well, hello, Art, and hi, Will.
Patty, where are you, Patty?
I'm in Stormville, New York.
Stormville, New York. And how in the world did you get all involved in this story?
Well, Art, it happened in June, before the outbreak. I had a chance meeting of an acquaintance, and he had worked at Plum Island. He was an independent contractor. And we were just discussing the facility, and he was telling me a little bit about it. And he was concerned about safety issues. In fact, so concerned that he didn't stay there very long. He lasted 2 weeks and walked off the job. And then in August of this year, I heard there was a malaria outbreak.
Did he
on Long Island.
Did he tell you specifically what scared him enough to leave?
Yes, he did. He mentioned the pathogens that they had. It just was he was a young man, his wife was expecting, and he was deathly afraid of bringing something home. He did mention anthrax. He saw a movie to get the position at Plum Island. They didn't do a background check. For the most part, who he was didn't matter. They offered him a good scale of pay, and they showed him a movie what to do should an accident take place.
Mm-hmm.
And he just didn't feel the place was all that safe.
Now, William mentioned earlier in the show that they are bio-level containment 5.
That's right.
I didn't even know there was such a thing.
We found there is a United Nations lab in Italy, which is interesting to note because not far from that place in '98, there was an outbreak of West Nile, almost the same strain, which was suspicious. And according to protocol, what usually happens with Plum Island is pathogens from foreign countries are sent to Plum Island. So if there was an outbreak, samples of the pathogen would have gone to Plum Island.
Well, I know that you're not an expert, Patty, but I've seen, all the movies about bio-level containment 4 cautions, with the suits they wear and all the rest of that sort of thing. Does anybody know what happens when you go to containment level 5, whatever in God's name that would be?
I think Will has it down pretty well.
Will?
Yeah, we've got it down. The U.S. Department of Agriculture tells us that a biosafety level 5, I call it biohazard level 5,
right,
is for labs that by law are not allowed on the U.S. mainland. Because if the diseases there get loose, well, you can imagine the rest. This Plum Island lab was set up in '54, specifically offshore, just 2 miles offshore, with the idea of prevailing winds blowing out to sea, blowing to the east, away from the mainland. That is how they achieved their bio-level 5 status.
Well, that sounds great, but what about prevailing birds?
Prevailing birds fly upwind to the mainland, and storms, by the way, which could cause a power failure, and perhaps if the generators fail, negate the negative pressure that keeps these pathogens indoors. Those storms blow onshore.
Onshore?
Oh, yes. They come in off the Atlantic, and they howl onto the mainland coast, 2 miles away.
God. So in other words, a bird or a storm or any number of other things could make the idea of having these incredibly dangerous things a couple of miles offshore a joke.
These dangerous things are foot and mouth disease, which we haven't seen in the United States, and the Rinderpest virus that they've been working on a vaccine successfully out of Plum Island, and by the way, injecting human test subjects because some of these animal diseases are transferable to humans. This is a lab that has been cited, as Patty will possibly go into some detail, for numerous safety violations and accidents. And a Dr. Mike Kiley, discussing biocontainment and explaining levels 1 through 5 at a public function recently, emphasized the necessity for upgrading those facilities to maintain the required biosecurity.
So
in fact, they were failing safety inspection.
He discussed this publicly?
Oh, yeah.
And he outlined the fact there's a level 5?
Oh, he and the director, Mr. Torres, in another meeting, openly said, "Oh yes, this is a level 5 facility." Patty, however, got a different response when she called Plum Island.
What did you get, Patty?
Well, the representative said she never heard of level 5, and she had to get back to me. She says, "We'll call you back."
Oh.
And she got in touch with Dr. Kiley. And when she called back, she said, "Oh, he was laughing. There's no level 5. We're a level 3 facility." So then I told her about what I had heard at the meeting, and she said, "Well, you must have misunderstood." And they tried to just put it down.
This meeting is the United States Animal Health Association Government Relations Committee meeting in Washington, D.C., February 22 to 27th, 1998. There you go, for the record.
Anybody have an audio tape or anything else of it?
I didn't.
No, we have documentation from that meeting on a government website.
You mean
I got it from their own website.
from their website?
Yes, the government.
Is it still there now, Patty? Or
Yes, it is.
It is?
Yes.
And now, Art, they want to officially, as of last September, officially upgrade to Bio-Level 4. They're asking for funding to upgrade to Bio-Level 4.
Well,
Perhaps we can clear something up here. The lab is operating actually as a Level 3 facility, that is, with negative air pressure and people taking a lot of showers. Level 5 is because they are located just offshore with some heavy-duty pathogens. Level 4 would give us the spacesuits and extra containment. But in fact, it is a Level 5 lab.
all right, hold it right there. We'll be right back. Boy, that's our government. They've blown it sky high, haven't they? I'm Art Bell, and this is Coast to Coast AM. Stay right where you are. A few quick things that have come in. Art, from Oregon. We've had spraying here in southern Oregon. There's a pattern of heavy spraying for about 3 days, then nothing for 2 weeks. Or this. Hi, Art. I'm in shock thinking about Plum Island. It's very close to New London, Connecticut. I guess that's where he is. It's bad enough that Gary North said that New London was a failure city for Y2K. Now, a one-of-a-kind number 5 lab just offshore. Some ocean storms drive in from the south right toward the New London area. Got a lot of friends and relatives in that area. Are they in harm's way? What the hell is next? This is scary. Fill in the blank, Art. Then there's this. Art, please verify my integrity with Will. We've been communicating on the chemtrails for 10 months. I'm the one who had the sample with the parasites Joyce Riley talked about. We got rid of the samples 3 days before I heard Joyce on your show. You called me, but I wasn't home. The last sample we took, the ball was dropped, even though they found an unidentified bacteria because the doctor receiving the sample would not pay for further testing as he wanted only the parasites. Please ask Will if he thinks it's a good idea to ask listeners to take samples of any goo they find, place it in a petri dish with a growing culture, see if we can get these horrific parasites again. And by the way, he's correct about the anxiety, depression, and dumbing down of the mind. I live in Fair Oaks, and it's a major spraying area. Also, we've seen white unmarked planes with black underbodies, black planes, and silver planes. My friend and I have a new group of samples, and we'll begin growing them tomorrow. We'll let you know. Sincerely, Jan. And then finally, this is an interesting thing to consider. It's from a police officer. And I won't give his name for his own protection, but he says, Art, there's a problem with the thinking that the group that would be spraying the chemicals would be trying to make people depressed and docile. I am a police officer, and, I work with a deputy who's in the department, so we're out in the weather all the time. We would be some of the very first people affected. We would also be the persons to keep the peace if things go bad on 1/1 of 2000. Just thought I'd pass this along. Interesting, huh, Will?
Very interesting. He mentioned being out in the weather, and we associate most of the spraying with clear skies, not with weather. I take it to mean heavy rain and wind.
Yeah.
So perhaps that explains the lack of spray that he might be noticing. A good point nonetheless.
Well, no, his point was that as a police officer, he's not saying he's not seeing this. He's saying if the effect was depression and causing people to be docile, emergency workers, fire, police, those kind of people, they're out in it all the time, and they would be the people you would be depending on to keep some kind of peace.
I see. Good point. Yes, thank you.
Okay, now Patty Doyle, by the way, I've got another one here, something called Free American News Magazine, and the headline is simply, Since when do C-130s leave contrails? That's what it says. Since when do C-130s leave contrails? And there is a photograph.
At treetop level, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. All right, well, again back to Plum Island. And, Patty, why don't you, Will, lead Patty through wherever you would like her to go?
Patty, could you talk about some of the safety violations and citations this lab has come under fire for in recent years?
Okay, well, we'll do recent years. 1993, they were cited for leaving 10 infected dead lab birds outside of the exotic animal lab in the corridor, in the open air. It's interesting to note because during my interview with the Plum Island representatives, they said they do not have any lab birds. They don't work on birds. There's no bird lab. And yet here we have the 10 dead lab birds. Okay, in 1994 they were cited for dumping waste into the sound. They were also cited for storing hazardous chemicals. In 1998, Dennis Bacco sued the federal government for Plum Island for illegal dumping into the sound. And
where is this information coming from, Patty?
EPA and from news articles, Newsday.
All right.
It's all documented. I can send you some stuff if you want to put it on the website.
Okay.
And we also have this spring, which is very interesting to note. We have Plum Island cited as a significant violator of the Clean Air Act and a high priority violator of the RCRA, Resource Conservation Recovery Act. And then we also have a installation job, a fiber optic cable that they installed under the sea between Orient Point and Plum Island. And during installation, I finally got the rep to admit that they did have the power out. And the cable that they installed was to run backup power also. So to finalize installation, they did have to shut the power to Plum Island.
So they were totally freaked about the possibility of losing power at Plum Island.
Yes.
Well, if they're a level 3 facility, they wouldn't need that, would they?
Yes, they need power to ensure that their blowers can continue to maintain negative air pressure so that any pathogens would stay inside the lab, and without power, you can't maintain negative air pressure.
Right. All right. Now, Patty, you said there was a website, a government website, that admits openly there is this level 5 containment facility, which nobody has ever heard of. Now, can you get that URL to my webmaster?
Yes, I can. It was the website for the United States Animal Health Association, and it is a government website, and I most certainly will as soon as the show is over.
All right, get it to webmaster. Simply send it to webmaster@artbell.com.
Okay.
Webmaster@artbell.com. All right, please continue, Will. Anything else Patty should be talking about?
Two things. First, it's incredible the lab is denying work on birds. Birds are one of the most common vectors of animal diseases. If you're studying exotic animal diseases, you must be experimenting and studying birds. You must, by definition. Patty might mention a little problem, not so little actually, in Long Island Sound as we speak, with the lobsters and a certain finfish that, again, it seems to be pointing fingers to an as yet unidentified bacteria in waters adjacent to Plum Island. Patty?
Yes, that's right. I've been corresponding with some fishermen out in the Sound. In fact, I have one interview to do today by telephone to Aaron Whitman. He's a lobster man. And the lobsters are dead and dying.
By the millions.
You know about that.
I do. And actually, over 1 million is what I've heard.
Yes. And also, since July, there are certain fish that are non-existent in the Sound, in the the North Shore of Long Island.
You mean fish that have been indigenous to the area that are now non?
That's right. I think bluefish were mentioned. Adult bunkers, whatever bunkers are, they were non-existent since July. And also worm population is down.
Now that's really worrisome. I mean, animals that are indigenous to an area suddenly disappearing altogether. Very worrisome.
Well, in 1970, Plum Island had an accident. It was hushed up. They had an accident, and they evacuated people from the island, and then they proceeded to toxic spray the entire island.
Do you know what kind of accident?
Just a microbe escape.
Just?
Yeah, that's all. It was nothing big, they said. It was after they finally admitted it. And they toxic sprayed the island. So what I'm tracing is trying to find out if similar fishing conditions existed back in the 70s as what we're witnessing now.
Hold on here. Red flag. We have another red flag here. We have one resident in Queens dying of a mysterious outbreak in September. Almost immediately on September 2nd, for the first time in New York City's history, massive spraying of a potent pesticide. This is an organophosphate pesticide similar to sarin and other nerve agents, began in that city. And it appears to me a similar panic reaction set in, and I can easily visualize, and I can come up with no other explanation. But picture a frantic phone call from Plum Island or from a federal health authority to the mayor of New York City saying, we have an outbreak, we have an escaped pathogen. What else would account for such massive spraying 1 month before the proper federal permits were obtained? This was an illegal spraying, and it appears to me a panic reaction. Similar to the reaction Patty mentioned of evacuating and spraying the island itself.
So in other words, you're really saying the whole thing is a giant cover-up, and you think this has come from Plum Island and not out of thin air, as they seem to more or less suggest.
Not out of thin air, not out of old tires. This was a genetically altered virus, according to CDC, whether natural or bioengineered.
Right.
We will know by the end of the month, according to the scientists doing the DNA testing. Hopefully they'll release that information. I believe that this was an outbreak from crows or other birds flying from Plum Island to the mainland, and that this spraying took place as a panic reaction. Remember, we had only one death, and the New York Times was saying in an editorial that based on experience elsewhere, people exposed in that area at the outbreak could expect to become sickened. They would have a 1 in 300,000 chance of becoming sick with something that would give them a 48-hour flu-like symptom unless they were elderly or had compromised immune systems. And the CDC estimated a maximum death toll of 10 people. And we have spraying for, according to the mayor, every 5 days for at least 5 weeks, and it will resume in the springtime with a malathion spraying that has a 4-page warning label saying keep this away from people.
All right.
They even went door to door collecting blood samples.
What?
The CDC went door to door collecting blood samples.
All right.
When this first broke out, and they won't give the people the results.
All right, both of you, hold on. We'll be right back. Okay. Well, we'll shortly begin to take phone calls for William. I'm Art Bell, and this is Coast to Coast AM. I have a feeling one of the chain links is broken. What do you think? out to William Thomas, and I want to get to phone calls shortly, William, but I also want to finish up with Patty. Anything else we should know? The record so far of Plum Island, as she has related it, sounds pathetic. Totally pathetic.
Pathetic or frightening, we might use that term for a level 5 lab, so close to major population centers. Art, I'd like to break in here if I could with a rather urgent update on the chemtrail story just came in.
Oh?
Yes, this really seems to confirm my hypothesis of leased aircraft, but now we're operating at higher altitudes with jets. Dave Peterson has informed me that people using binoculars in Aspen have identified a shamrock logo on the tails of some of the spray aircraft.
Shamrock.
This shamrock apparently is from an air freight company's logo. These aircraft have also been seen, he says, further west. We are now trying to track that logo and identify the air freight company involved with these aircraft, again seen spraying from lower altitudes than normal over Aspen today and in previous recent days.
Somebody out there will know what that logo means and get it to us.
Great.
Guarantee you. Okay, let us finish up with Patty. I know we're going to have to get some phone calls in here. There is one other question, though, that I have. Just one more, William. It didn't get answered. It was asked earlier in a fax. And that is, if people out there encounter this goo, or whatever in the hell it is, what do you say to them about, attempting to collect it? Is that potentially dangerous?
It is. People ought to wear some kind of rudimentary mask and certainly plastic or latex gloves. Those precautions, however, ought to be adequate. Put it in a Ziploc bag if you don't have a Petri dish, and email me, and we might be able to find a way to get it tested. The tests are expensive. I have a source now that maybe will do that for us. It is vital, though, that people videotape or take still pictures of the goo in the situation they find it.
All right.
And they collect it very carefully to avoid contamination, and they collect it off glass, such as a windshield of a car, a metal roof, or aluminum siding, not from the ground or any surface that could be contaminated with dirt. That's messed up many of the samples so far.
Right. Patty, anything else you want to get to us?
Well, basically, I did want to say that I had was born and raised in the Bronx and in Yonkers.
I can hear it in your voice.
I know you can. I'm just a private citizen that said, now is enough. No more. I lost the whole side of my family in Valley Stream, Long Island. My relatives died prematurely, most from breast cancer. And it just got to the point when I heard the story from the acquaintance, and I also heard from another acquaintance that they also conduct submarine activity at the island. They have training sessions, and when they say they're not government affiliated, I just get very angry. And I recently got a computer, and I got angry enough that I started asking questions. But what was interesting to note that when I approached the mainstream media, nobody was taking.
No takers, huh?
No takers whatsoever. I wrote to Congress, to Representative Forbes. I'm still waiting to hear from him.
Well, I'll tell you this, it sure is beginning to hit the non-mainstream media. I'm seeing a lot of articles.
Well, the place is a disaster. They do government contract work because there are certain doctors there. I don't want to name the names, but they work on Dominion, which is Canada, for Canada, and they work for Federal. They are contracted under those terms, Dominion and Federal. And the submarine activity indicates there would be a Navy connection. And also, if you note, Plum Island is 13 miles from Groton, Connecticut,
Right.
which is the submarine base.
Patty, are you at all concerned for your safety?
I was 2 days ago. There was a helicopter that came over the house, and I thought that he would land on my roof. Now my daughter got a look at it. I was so scared. I was taking a nap in the afternoon, and I put my feet on the floor, and I couldn't move. I was that scared. But no, I don't think too much is out now. And besides, all they think of me as a retiree. Too much time on my hands. And I think they, for the most part, they discount it. If it hits the mainstream media, well, then we'll see.
All right, Patty, you keep asking questions then, and when you get answers, you call me.
Okay.
All right?
Yes.
Thank you for coming on tonight, Patty.
And thank you, Art, and thank you so much, Will, for, I know he's been so busy with chemtrails, and I appreciate him taking the time to help me out in this. Thank you very much, Art.
Okay, you bet. Good night. All right, Will. We should try to take some calls from the audience and see what's on their mind. This is going to really blow a lot of people away, and it's going to make them very uncomfortable. You realize how this scares people.
I'm very concerned as a journalist, and every time I go on air, or I say a little prayer, that I speak not to frighten people, but to inform and alarm them, yes, to the point of taking action. And I want to stress this very strongly tonight. Art, we are just about out of time. Your show talks constantly about the earth changes that are not coming but are here now.
That's right.
Y2K is upon us. We are just about out of time, as someone said to me on the phone the other night. We better start taking this seriously, get together in our families, as communities, raise hell with our elected officials, particularly at the local level. Organize citizens' protest. I remind people that November 20th, there will be an international protest on chemtrails, centering on New York City, Times Square at the New York Times, 12 noon. Go to your local media, particularly your television station, organize chemtrail protests wherever you are located, and get together now and insist on media coverage and government accountability. Time is running out.
All right. Again, I would like to say anybody in the media, particularly in the media, obviously we want to get the word out. Part of, we never know whether what we're saying is completely true or some of it is not completely true. But the only way to get to it is to continue to investigate and get the mainstream media involved. So if you're in the media and would like information from Will, you can email him at Wilco, W-I-L-C-O, at islandnet.com. That's Wilco at islandnet.com. Let's try a few calls here. First time caller line, you're on the air with William Thomas. Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, hello.
Hello, where are you?
Somewhere in the southern U.S.
Somewhere in the southern U.S., all right?
Yes. This Art?
Yes, it is.
Yes, hi. Glad I got through. Well, what I have to say is kind of in line with what your guest has had to say about chemtrails, and it also carries on into something even, it's going to blow your mind. I received a email from a gentleman who was a friend of my father's, and this man had worked closely with the CDC. He had been fired from his job for sending my father a letter informing him way back when, before public disclosure about AIDS had come through, warning him about that. So I know that this man's information was it's something that you could take.
So in other words, some man emailed your father and told him about AIDS before it ever became public.
And this was before email.
Oh, okay.
He wrote him a letter.
I got you. All right. So you trust the man as a source. What's he saying
Correct.
now?
He emailed me with an attachment stating in it, and I'll try and put it in a nutshell because I don't know how much time I have to talk about this, that what's to come is on or about November the 14th, you're going to see a major pullout in the stock market. And the reason behind that is, I'll get to that. On or about the turn of the century, of course, the new year, He alluded to in his letter, I'm not going to use any exact quotes because he writes in quite a unique fashion, and so you might recognize that.
Yes.
That several major U.S. cities will be destroyed. And he said that the government is going to allude to a possible extraterrestrial source of this occurrence. And he said that the reason will be that in order to jump into a type of martial law,
you've got to have an emergency, right?
You've got to have an emergency.
And so you're saying they're going to cook it up and it's coming soon?
Correct. And that in order for this to happen, we have to have the old common enemy. He said that the U.S. troops right now, there aren't enough in action to support such action in the United States as it exists.
Well, I'm beginning to wonder if the enemy is not us. I appreciate your call. It doesn't precisely relate to what we are discussing right now, but I appreciate your call. And we'll see all kinds of dire forecasts and occurrences for the millennium. So, any questions for William Thomas? Wildcard line, you're on the air.
Mr. Thomas, yeah, your reports are great. I really appreciate it. Listen, I was wondering, here in Philadelphia in the western suburbs, occasionally we see a lot of chemtrails, and they're clearly identifiable. And on days when, many times when we don't see chemtrails, I just see a lot of planes fly over here, and they come by, and I wanted to ask you if other people have seen these various types of aircraft that have variously colored blinking lights that seem to be specifically blinking particular ways, and if there's any electromagnetic effect involved with the chemtrails, because that's the way it seems to me. And
all right, sir. Well, to follow up on that, there has been some speculation that things emitted from airplanes, chemicals or whatever, might be used in conjunction with something like HARP to try and affect the weather. William?
Yes, and not even HARP. We have the Gwen ground system. We have a lot of electromagnetic smog or pollution. In answer to the caller, yes, I have 2 reports of very odd, almost hypnotic light displays at night or twilight. I have reports of aircraft flying low over houses and disturbing television reception over an area.
They do that, yes.
And in Lenny Horowitz's latest book, he talks about prions. He talks about how these crystalline protein structures resonate to very subtle frequencies. And I'm beginning to wonder if chemicals sprayed on us or otherwise ingested could be activated by electromagnetic frequencies. I'm not the first to think of this, but I now have some documentation to back up that kind of speculation. And if so, this answers another question for me, namely if various fungi are being sprayed at higher altitudes, how can they survive the UV? And it now appears that the ultraviolet is actually an activator of these substances.
That doesn't surprise me one bit. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with William Thomas.
Good morning.
Morning to you.
You guys are trying to scare us to death out here.
Well, it's scaring me to death. Where are you, sir?
I'm in Michigan.
Michigan, all right.
Hey, I'm the guy that sent you the contrail photo art with Jupiter Menace. Did you happen to get that yet?
Yes, I did.
Anything worthwhile?
Oh, yes. Hang in there. It's in the pile.
Yeah, it's in the pile. It's the one that says open before Michigan trip. That's
I know. I've got it. I got it.
Anyway, you answered part of my question with the Project TARP thing, but William, is there anything we can do to protect ourselves against this? Is there anything that we as the public can, like, wear, eat, whatever, to protect ourselves?
Absolutely. And let's have some good news now.
Okay, good, yes, good.
Here's the good news. Whatever is being sprayed on us, and we do have a handle on some of these substances, and we've been talking about an encephalitis out on the East Coast, these are not lethal substances to almost all of us with a normally functioning immune system, except for the very elderly. And I'm beginning to suspect that perhaps they are being targeted by governments or even higher placed people concerned about changing demographics and an aging population. That aside, the answer to your question is yes. Ken Alibek, who you'll probably recognize as the former head of the Soviet biowarfare program, defected to the United States in '92, said in an interview recently that vaccines against biowarfare agents are ineffective and impossible to either concoct or to inoculate a population. He says to protect yourself against bioweapons, you must boost your immune system.
That's right. He also said, I believe, that the U.S. is so far behind the Russians in the work being done. In other words, they are working on some sort of inoculation versus what they have to disperse if they want to.
Yes.
That it's just forget it. It's out of reach.
Again, my book, Bringing the War Home, has a chapter, an entire chapter on remedies and protection. Basically, it's eating organic food that has not been dusted with germ warfare-derived pesticides. It's about taking very high-quality supplements, vitamins, minerals, and herbs on a daily basis. It's about loving the heck out of each other, getting in touch, keeping vaccines out of your veins and out of the bloodstreams of your children, and doing everything we can to boost our natural immune systems. And that is our very best protection and effective in almost every case so far.
In other words, the old, what is it, the strongest shall survive, or whatever it is, that saying is going to be absolutely true, right?
It is absolutely true, and yet this isn't a survival of the fittest jungle scenario. It's a rebuilding immune systems that have been trashed by industrial pollutants, and particularly, here's the big one, stress.
In the end, though, William,
yes,
survival of the fittest is what is going to be true, if what you're saying is accurate.
Yes, I'm simply noting that many of us can be among the fittest if we take those precautions and have that awareness.
All right.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Are you good for the last hour?
Let's do it.
Okay, good. Stay right where you are then. William Thomas is my guest. Rhythm of the Falling Chemtrails.
The increase in air traffic and the disturbance of jungle by man's activity, bringing these things to the surface and whatnot. Now, if you look at that closely, Vietnam was a jungle that was severely disturbed, and there's a lot of air traffic out of there. There was no emerging viruses. Very strange. You'd think they could emerge from Vietnam, but they didn't. And I think the reason was they didn't know how to emerge back then. We hadn't invented the methodology for these viruses to emerge. We certainly didn't have any. If you look at the climatological thing, all that really is a shift of a fraction of a degree upwards in average annual temperatures.
That's right, yes.
It doesn't amount to a environmental change that would allow, say, an AIDS-like virus or a monkey virus or an Ebola virus to exist in, say, Toronto or northern Finland, and yet you're getting those diseases up there. Now, we've always had terrible diseases coming out of jungles, but they don't spread. People go there, they get them, and they get infected. But
of course, one might argue we live in the jet age now.
Yes, but Vietnam was in the jet age also.
Yes, it was.
And there's a lot of jets going along here. We just don't get that sort of thing happening. And when these viruses come into these new territories, they generally don't infect populations. This is an entirely new phenomenon. What is it that viruses suddenly learn to do something different?
Well, those are all very valid questions, sir, and I'm sure you agree, Will.
I do, and it's a very important point, and I'm delighted that this has been brought up. It must be aired publicly. If we look at the Mycoplasma fermentans going around with Gulf War illness now in the population, the new pneumonias, AIDS, chronic fatigue, respiratory distress, lupus, meningitis, these outbreaks are occurring in the wake of chemtrails and otherwise, and if we look behind them, we find in most cases mycoplasma, and we find U.S. patent 5242820, awarded September 7, 93 to Dr. Lowe, working for the U.S. military, by the way, linking all of these outbreaks and diseases with mycoplasma. If we look at mycoplasma experimentation in the Huntsville prison among the inmates there in 68, we find more than 230 nearby residents living around the prison stricken with CFIDs, MS, lupus, fibromyalgia, cancers, meningitis, Epstein-Barr, exactly the diseases we are seeing again in the wake of the chemtrails, and all of them linked to mycoplasma. Mycoplasma has been looked at and played with by the bioweaponeers since the 1970s, since the Vietnam era, and I agree with the caller tonight. These are primarily escaped from labs, and they are escaped from vaccines, and they are in no way natural.
Yeah, what he said was they're emerging from labs, not simply emerging.
Correct. Correct. And Dr. Garth Nicholson, who along with his wife Nancy Nicholson discovered the mycoplasma in Gulf War illness, has agreed with me in correspondence that these outbreaks worldwide are not naturally occurring.
Okay, let's keep moving. Wildcard line, you're on the air with William Thomas and Art Bell. Good morning.
Hello?
Hello.
Am I on?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, I've got your ender. The music that you play, bumper music, you've collected it for the past 100 years. Now, you are a sentient computer, and you respond to this musical input.
That's right.
And that's the way with all of us. When you go outside tonight after you've completed the show, you go out and you look up at the sky, and you'll see that we're sitting in a big omnidome. And that omnidome on the first of the year is going to open up. And we're going to all be exposed to the most beautiful music that you've ever heard. Now, I could give you a whole bunch of enders like that if I could give you 5 hours of enders.
No. We'll settle for that one. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm a big fan of music. It's a mood changer. It's a mood alterer. East of the Rockies, you're on air with William Thomas and Art Bell.
Hello, Art. I've been an avid listener of yours for now on to 9 years.
Nigh on to. All right,
Yeah. My name is Blair. I'm in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Yes, sir.
And statement I made to you earlier, the possible reasoning behind the contrails is that we haven't had a good war in a long time, and it could be the United States, or the government, not the United States, but the government's way of controlling the population.
I think that's what William's been saying.
And I also witnessed a contrail last spring. The plane did a U-turn over the rock.
Stop!
Yep, I've seen the same thing. Exactly. As a matter of fact, I did better than that. I photographed it, and I got photographs up on my website. So, yes, something's going on. There's absolutely, whether it's as William has suggested right down the line or as yet unknown, something is definitely going on. West of the Rockies, you're on there with William Thomas and Art Bell. Hi.
Hi, Art. It's Cordelia from Missoula, Montana.
Welcome.
I have a question for William. I have syphilis, and we have a telephone tree going. We've had an awful lot of chemtrails over Missoula, and what we have noticed, or what the syphilis have noticed, we've had an awful lot of bronchial stuff, tremendous coughing and tightness in the chest, coughing so much that you almost vomit. Have you heard of this, William?
I haven't heard of it in relation to your illness. No, I haven't.
but I mean in relation to the chemtrails.
Oh, absolutely. And
Okay.
I would suggest to you and to many others to get checked out for mycoplasma, and if tested positive, doxycycline treatments, again pioneered by Dr. Garth Nicholson,
Right.
can be effective in about 95% of cases. But you must be checked positive before you take antibiotics of that dosage and that duration.
Right. Thank you.
If you go to a doctor and you say you want to be checked out for that, will most doctors do it or not?
I believe they'll do it, Art. I believe it's also somewhat expensive. And if people can get to Dr. Garth Nicholson's website, I'm sorry it's not in front of me, I should have it. He is offering kits for blood testing for the mycoplasma. But yes, it can be done, and I'm not sure of the cost.
All right. Wildcard line, you're on the air with William Thomas and not a lot of time. Hi.
Yes, good evening, Art. When I was in '68 in the military, Green the Shamrock on the aeroplanes was the agency out of Mina, and my daughter has had the worst asthma. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. She's nearly died from it and hospitalized. Ever since in the last year, it has gone off the boards.
I know.
That's my statement.
All right. Well, I'll just take it at face value. I know it has. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with William Thomas.
Yes, Art. Put this whole encephalitis situation into context. I live in Westchester County. We were sprayed recently.
Right.
People should be aware of the fact that encephalitis outbreaks have occurred in the northeastern United States for as long as there's been, Europeans here.
Not this stuff, though.
Well, our diseases do mutate over time. The movie The Awakening, I believe it was called, with Robert De Niro and Robin Williams, was based on a real-life story about the encephalitis outbreak in New York back, I believe, in the 1930s.
Right.
So, yellow fever, malaria have occurred even in the Northeast. So, we should just place this all, I think, in a historical context.
Yes, but I have heard the scientists, really well-qualified scientists who are working on this say that they have no idea how West Nile could have showed up in this mutated form in North America. No idea at all. I mean, they're genuinely puzzled about this. It doesn't seem logical.
Well, there was even a lot of problems of identifying it. Some people said West Nile, some people said St. Louis.
Yep.
There's a lot of gray area.
Yeah, and that's because it has mutated, either naturally or by the hand of man. We don't know. But something's going on. William, we have come to the end of the program. All I can say is thank you, and of course you'll be back again. And as the story develops, William, my door is open. You know that.
Art, thank you very much for this opportunity, and I want to thank the many people who have supported my work and my research. I spoke for many of you tonight, and in some of your voices. Thank you all very much.
Okay, my friend, that's it. Good night.
Good night, Art.
And from the high desert, that in fact is it. Good night to you all. See you tomorrow night. It's going to be an interesting program tomorrow night. I think you're going to enjoy it, so be here. From the high desert, ciao.